There are moments in life when time slows to a cruel crawl, moments when even breathing feels like lifting a mountain. That was exactly what happened in the cold, glass-walled conference room of Haldon and Silver Corp., one of the richest companies in the city, when the CEO whispered with trembling lips, "Please, just make it fast." The words didn't sound like an order from a powerful man. They sounded like a plea from a broken father, a man holding tightly to something that was slipping beyond his reach, and standing across from him was either the last person anyone expected, or the only person destiny intended for that moment, a tired, overworked, underpaid single dad named Daniel Ross. If you believe in kindness, redemption, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps us spread more stories like this. The morning had begun like every other, gray, rushed, and heavy. Daniel had spent half an hour trying to convince his 8-year-old daughter, Emma, to wear her little pink jacket instead of the thin hoodie she insisted on. She didn't like the pink jacket because it reminded her of her mother, a woman who had walked out of their lives 2 years ago without a goodbye. Every morning since, Daniel carried both the weight of being a dad and the guilt of not being able to give Emma the life she deserved. He kissed her forehead before dropping her off at school, wishing he had the luxury to sit with her a little longer, maybe share a warm breakfast instead of handing her the same peanut butter sand, which wrapped in scrappy brown paper. But life never waited for him. He rushed to the bus, a cheap locksmith toolkit clutched in one hand, a folder of unpaid bills in the other. Being a locksmith wasn't glamorous, but it kept the lights on good months anyway. On bad months, like this one, he had to choose between groceries and rent. By the time he arrived at Haldon and Silver Corp for an emergency service call, he already felt the exhaustion creeping through his bones. He didn't belong there. He could feel it in the way the marble floor echoed under his worn-out boots, and the way employees in suits glanced at him, as if he'd accidentally wandered into royal chambers. The receptionist pointed him toward the top floor, where a malfunctioning security door had locked the CEO out of his own private office. It was supposed to be a simple job, something he'd done 1,000 times, but the moment the elevator doors opened, Daniel sensed something different. The air was heavy, like walking into a room where someone had just cried. Inside the massive conference room stood a man so pale he looked like a ghost. Logan Haldon, the billionaire CEO whose photo appeared on countless business magazines. But today he looked nothing like the powerful mogul the world admired. His shoulders trembled, his eyes were red, his hands kept wiping tears before he even realized he was crying. Daniel had seen grief before, but not like this. Logan gestured weakly toward the jammed glass door leading into his office, but his voice cracked as he whispered again, "Please, just make it fast." Something inside Daniel froze. This wasn't about a door. There was a story here, a deep one, a painful one, but Daniel didn't ask questions. Life had taught him that sometimes people weren't crying because they were weak, but because they'd been strong alone for far too long. He approached the faulty lock and began examining it. His fingers moved slow at first, then carefully, gently, like a doctor treating a wound. Logan paced behind him, trying to compose himself but failing miserably. After a moment, Daniel took off his jacket, an old, faded brown coat with frayed sleeves, and quietly placed it across the glass just under the lock to protect the surface. Logan blinked, surprised by the gesture. No contractor he'd hired before had ever cared enough to protect anything, let alone something as trivial as a piece of glass, but Daniel always worked like this. He didn't have much in life, but what he did have was respect for people, for property, for the small dignity that came from doing a job right even when nobody was looking. As he knelt on the floor and slowly worked the lock open, Logan's eyes fell on a photograph that slipped from Daniel's coat pocket, a smiling little girl with missing front teeth holding a homemade birthday cake. Daniel didn't notice, but Logan did, and it hit him harder than he expected, because the reason his voice was breaking, the reason his body was trembling, the reason he kept saying, "Make it fast," wasn't because of a broken lock. It was because of time he no longer had. The moment the lock clicked open, Daniel stood up slowly. He expected Logan to inspect the door, maybe sign a form, maybe offer a polite thank you. Instead, the CEO collapsed into the nearest chair, hands trembling violently, face buried in his palms. Daniel, unsure whether to leave or stay, simply stood there in heavy silence. It was Logan who broke it first. He whispered that his 13-year-old daughter, Lily, was in the hospital fighting a rare heart condition. The doctors told him she needed immediate surgery, but she had refused to go under until she could get something important first. A small wooden music box her mother had given her before she passed away. It was locked inside Logan's office, the same office Logan had been locked out of for hours. She kept asking me to bring it to her. He choked out. She said she wouldn't be scared if she had it, and I couldn't even open a door. Suddenly the plea made sense. Make it fast. Time wasn't just precious, time was life, and Logan had almost lost both. Daniel didn't know what to say, but he knew the panic of being a father too well. He knew what it was like to feel helpless while your child needed you. He knew the ache in Logan's voice because he had lived it many times. Without saying a word, Daniel stepped into the office, found the small, hand-painted music box sitting on a bookshelf, and held it out with both hands. Logan clutched it like something holy. He didn't even wait for an invoice or a receipt. He simply whispered, "Come with me, please." Daniel had no idea why, but he followed. The ride to the hospital was fast, tense, and painfully quiet. In the passenger seat of the CEO luxury car, Daniel felt painfully out of place, but he stayed, because something in Logan's eyes told him this wasn't just about delivering a box. It was about not being alone at a moment when a man could break. When they reached the hospital room, Logan's daughter lay small and fragile on the white bed, tubes attached to her fragile body, but when she saw the music box, her eyes lit up, weak but bright. Logan placed it gently beside her, and Lily smiled as the soft melody began to play. Daniel stood at the door, watching a father crumble into tears as his daughter's fear melted away. The moment was too pure to intrude, but then something unexpected happened. Lily looked at Daniel and whispered, "Thank you for helping my dad." He looked so scared. Daniel swallowed hard. Her words struck deeper than she knew. He had seen that same scared look in the mirror whenever Emma got sick, whenever a bill came he couldn't pay, whenever he wondered if he was enough. The doctors soon prepared Lily for surgery, and Logan stepped out into the hallway, collapsing into a chair. Daniel sat beside him, not because he was asked, but because he knew that sometimes silence was the best form of support. Hours passed. When the surgeon finally emerged with a tired smile, Logan's knees nearly buckled. "She's stable," the doctor said. The surgery went well. Daniel felt his own breath escape his chest. Logan turned to him with eyes full of gratitude, confusion, and something close to disbelief. "You didn't have to stay," he whispered. Daniel managed a small smile. "You're a dad. We show up for each other, even when the world doesn't." Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe relief, maybe fate. But at that moment, Logan Haldon, one of the richest men in the city, felt something he hadn't felt in years, humanity, and he wasn't about to forget the man who reminded him of it. The next day, when Daniel returned to pick Emma up from school, he found Logan waiting outside in a black car. For a second, Daniel panicked, thinking he'd forgotten to sign a service form or something. But Logan stepped out, his expression soft. "I owe you more than thanks," he said. "You saved my daughter's courage. You saved her father's sanity. Let me help you now." Daniel shook his head quickly. "You don't owe me anything." Logan smiled sadly. "I know, and that's why I want to help." He handed Daniel a sealed envelope. Inside was a job offer, a permanent position in Logan's company overseeing all building maintenance operations. A real salary, health insurance, stability, safety, a chance at life again, and attached to it was a scholarship certificate in Emma's name for any school she wanted. Daniel's knees weakened. He didn't cry often. Life had taught him to swallow tears, but today They came like rain after a long drought. 2 fathers, 2 daughters, 2 lives changed, not by money, not by power, but by kindness, by humanity, by one man's jacket placed gently under a broken lock. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. It helps the channel grow and keeps stories like this alive. Before the ending, please comment below. Kindness changes everything. And that is how a single dad with nothing to his name changed the life of a billionaire, and in return, changed the future of his own little girl. Sometimes the smallest acts unlock the biggest miracles.